They call me Tatsuki Fujimoto because I've never once given a woman a happy ending. Somehow with my choice of shirt, that doesn't seem like a joke. Alright! It's spring roundup time! Yeehaw! I don't know why I turned into a cowboy, but guess what? Third spring season in a row of me doing these motherfuckers, that spring has been absolutely fucking cracked out. Absolutely stacked with good shit. There's some misses too this season. Not super misses like there have been in previous seasons. All around, this one was pretty solid. A lot of really strong showings this season. So yeah, we'll obviously no Demon Slayer. Not gonna do My Hero Academia, anything like that. All right, we're gonna start off with Kaiju number 8. If you watched my Shonen Jump manga tier list from about a year ago, you know how I feel about this series. It's wonderful. I think they did a really good job with it, because we kind of had a bit of a scare going into it where we kind of thought it looked like ass, right? The art style, especially like in the lead up, like the trailers and shit, it kind of looked off, but upon the show coming out, it really proved itself. Like, the art style works really well. It's similar enough to the original mangaka, whose name escapes me, their art style, that it makes it work, and it's actually really well animated too. The dynamic scenes, action scenes are really, really good. Not the best out of, they're not Jujutsu Kaisen level, but they are very, very good. They're fun to watch. Specifically, I think Hoshina's fight scenes are very well choreographed. And of course, Kaiju number 8, Kafka's, some of his more spectacular moments look very flashy and cool as well. So, visuals, great, very strong overall. I was surprised by the super hard push for the Western market for this one. Both the opening and ending are by Western, American artists, which surprised me. And they put the bitch on Twitter. They streamed the bitch on Twitter and took the ad revenue. What? That's the first. Ultimately, I think this show, it's nothing groundbreaking, right? But it's so fundamentally strong in just about every aspect. In terms of its characters, in terms of its action, in terms of its storytelling and its pacing, in terms of it keeps you on your toes. A lot of these concepts where you have a guy who's been taken over by a monster. He has a childhood friend who's just so much more talented than he is, and he's the worst guy, and he just can't do anything conventionally, basically. But finds a way around it somehow by some one in a gazillion chance thing occurring to him, and becomes super powerful. A lot of these tropes we've seen before, but Kaiju number 8 does a really good job carving its own identity this era has been flooded with incredible shonen and action shows. This era of anime, 2020s, late 2010s. Kaiju number 8, I think, does a great job carving its own identity. It does everything right. It doesn't make a single misstep, in my opinion. Its pacing is really good. Characters are great. There's a lot of really, these aren't groundbreaking characters, but they are good characters. Everything is there. Everything that needs to be there is there. And so it's not just carried by, Kafka and Reno and Kikoru. It's more than them. And especially once we go into next season, which just got announced yesterday at the end of the last episode, we're going to start seeing a lot more of them too. We're going to learn more about their backstories. There's a lot of important characters here. Hoshina too, Hoshina, Mina, everybody. There's not, most of the characters that we spend time with are going to end up, we're going to understand them beyond a fundamental level, right? So everything that Kaiju number 8 does, it does well. It's just nothing groundbreaking. So basically everything to all of the makings of a really fun action-oriented shonen are there, and that's all we can really ask for. Like, this is just a summation of everything, I guess, but there was an article I saw where there was like a TLDR that kind of reviewed this show, and it was like, Kaiju No.8's really solid, but ultimately fails to innovate within the shonen genre. And that's true, it doesn't. But if you like action shonen with like good characters and, you know, dramatic fight scenes and these twists and turns that, you know, keep you on your toes, that like with a story that's paced really well and an interesting antagonist even, like, you know, there's still more to explore there, but again, antagonist is nothing groundbreaking, but it fits. It works with the setting and the style of show it is. It's just really strong. It's very strong all around. I have nothing but praise for Kaiju No.8. So yeah, if you like action-oriented stuff, huge recommend from me. Big 2 thumbs up. Love Kaiju No.8. Today, we lift up our spirits, leave out milk and cookies, and offer living sacrifices to Daddy Cloverworks. Windbreaker! This shit rules. It really does. This shit makes Tokyo Revengers clench its teeth and, like, fucking wet itself, right? Like shit its pants. Like, this show looks so good. Thank you, Daddy Cloverworks. My God, does it look good. Like, it's never been more fun to watch these characters absolutely just punch the shit out. Like, no magic, no bullshit. They just punch and kick each other. It looks great. Like, such dynamic 3D camera angles, fluid motion, like, great choreography from Cloverworks. Just stunning visuals the whole time. When it looks great. Story-wise, it's basically entirely character-driven. You know, when you look back on Season 1, we did get Season 2, so I'm looking forward to that, but when we look back on Season 1 of Windbreaker, I think the thing that's going to stick with us the most is that kind of few episode arc where they, you know, the little squad from Bofrutin went to the other school and like had 5 one-on-one matches in a row. That's what's going to stick with us, and really what that was just us getting to understand those characters, like Suo and Sugishita. Sakura having like his big fight against the number 2 of the other school. And, of course, what's his face? Yuichi Nakamura guy fighting it out with the number 1 guy whose backstory was very compelling as well. Like, they had their backstory sort of intertwined a bit. But, yeah, that's what we're going to remember the most. And that was, like, by far the most important thing that happened this season. But, again, that's entirely character-driven. Like, these characters, by fighting it out, they're like coming to understand each other, and we're coming to understand them as the audience watching them. And they are interesting characters. Like, they're not one note. There's definitely some depth to pretty much every one of them. Overall, really strong. There are also some good characters not involved in there, in that like 5-on-5 BS. Some new characters kind of got introduced late into the season. I'm assuming we'll see more of them going into Season 2. But they're not. They all have their own gimmicks, right? It's very Tokyo Revengers-esque. It's not hard to see that the author of this was inspired by Tokyo Revengers. But Daddy Cloverworks must have just seen Tokyo Revengers and been like, hold my fucking beer. Because, wow, this shit is fun to watch. Like, even if you don't care about the characters, right? It looks so good. Wow, I can't say enough good things. Like, it just looks great. I think the only misstep, and this is not necessarily a misstep in terms of the adaptation, the anime, I think we have, the one thing that we're missing, in my opinion, is not delving all the way into Sakura's backstory. Because as a lead character, you do kind of understand him, but it's a little hard to get on board with him fully, because he has these, like, violent reactions, like, these over-dramatic reactions when anybody is kind to him for any reason. And we do sort of see, like, tiny tidbits of what happened in his past, and we, like, sort of understand that, like, he was treated as an outcast for all his life. He was always by himself. He's afraid to make close relationships for fear to backfire on him, but we don't know why. And not exploring that fully in the first season is a misstep, in my opinion, at least in this bit, because Sakura has all of these reactions, and like he does get better as the season goes on, for sure. But it's just, I feel like we would understand him so much better if they had just delved into his backstory, like maybe even for like a few minutes in like episode 2 or 3, right? Like, if we had just understood him from the very beginning, I feel like all of his actions that he had taken throughout this first season, we would have been so much more compelled to watch and root for him, right? And I get that there is a sort of storytelling elegance to saving his backstory for later, but he's just such a... He just has, you know, these reactions of his when anybody is kind to him for whatever reason, whether it's Kotoha or Nide or, you know, literally any of his friends from the school. He just has these overreactions of his are sometimes a little like, all right, man, dude, like, these people, they're just being nice. Like, it's not any deeper than that. And we sort of get it, but I just wanted a little bit more about him. You know, that's the only thing I think I was missing from this season, storytelling wise. But overall, really strong, really enjoyed Windbreaker. Great show. Can't wait for season 2. And hopefully between this season and next season, I will be caught up on the manga, so I'll hopefully have a different perspective. It was just really good, really enjoyable to watch, for sure. Great stuff. 2 thumbs up. Alright, a condition called love. I struggle with this one a bit. Is it a shoujo? It's not shoujo harem, but I think it falls under the shoujo category. Kind of like Love is Deaf. What the fuck was that one called from last season? Love is Deaf. I'd look like an asshole for that one. No, it falls into that same category as that one for sure. We have these 2 characters, Hananoi and I forgot her name, Hotaru. These 2 characters on like the opposite ends of the spectrum of romance experience, right? Where we have this guy who has basically sought out romance because it's like the only way he knows how to receive love, and he's like craving love constantly because he had a bad time with his parents or whatever. His parents are gone all the time, never really received parental love or guidance when he was young. And her, Hotaru, who's like not really interested and doesn't really even understand what being in love would feel like. And Hananoi is just so obsessive about just receiving love and just gets like super clingy to anyone who he's involved with. So it's kind of interesting to see them work out their differences and come to understand each other and like approach romance in their own way. I get the appeal, right? I do get the appeal of it. But it just threw me off. You know, like I don't want to come out of every episode thinking that was weird and I'm a little uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like, I want to come out of an episode of a romance anime feeling all warm inside. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to feel a little happier. And I do think, like, by the end, it's like, yeah, all right, yeah, you too, go be happy, good for you. But, yeah, I mean, like, again, like, Hotaru is, like, so naive when it comes to romance, not really sure how to approach it, but she's just so, like, genuinely sweet that she is an endearing protagonist, for sure. And, like, watching her as she learns about what it means to be in love and to show love to somebody, it's charming, and it's a very special way. But the ending is pretty cute. I don't really have too much, like, it's definitely a shoujo in the sense that, like, Hananoi is, like, very overly affectionate and clingy, right? There's nothing bad about that, but it's just, and I do realize his obsessive personality is like an intentional character flaw. So it does kind of make it interesting. It does give the show its own sort of identity. I wasn't really having it, though. Personally. You know, maybe if you're like someone who, you know, likes their romance anime to be a bit like... You analyze romance anime like Shonen Dude Bros analyze power scaling. Maybe not that deep. But, you know, there is some nuance. That's the word I was looking for. Nuance to this one. Very peculiar is the word I would use. It's alright, though. Go, go, loser ranger! So, after quintuplets single-handedly became the most ubiquitous harem romance anime of our generation, Nagi Haruba had a 12-second meeting with the editor-in-chief of Weekly Shonen Magazine and said, look, man, can I just do whatever I want now? And the editor-in-chief, without even looking up from his Honkai Star Rail dailies, said, yeah, sure, whatever. Do whatever, I don't care. And out came this. In a capitalist dystopian action drama parodying Super Sentai. Wow. I've never seen anything quite like this. Negi Haruba, I don't know what goes on in that man's brain, but I kind of like it. It was actually pretty dang good. We saw in the trailers it was going to be 3D. I was like, are we sure about this? Because a few years back, maybe 2 years ago, I tried reading the manga and couldn't really get into it. Going back to it now, there's, again, a lot of nuance to this one, and it's not quite as, like, straightforward as your typical shonen, but there are a lot of elements of shonen in this, which I appreciate. A lot of good action. I think it kind of, like, interwove... That's not the right word, but the way they use 3D and, like, fucking blended it in with the 2D stuff in this show was pretty good, and I think helped make the animation pretty nice. There's a lot of, like, interesting depth to this world, because really there's a lot going on, and it is cool to see it all unfold, right? Because I'm not gonna, like, go, like, explain the premise or anything. If you really want to know, you just watch it, because it is good. Its narrative is pretty interesting, and there's a lot of, like, dynamic characters that, like, play so, like, you know, there's not a single character in this show, except maybe, what's his face? Red-haired boy. There's not a single character in this show that's singularly good or evil, right? They all lay somewhere in a gray area. And it's really a Hibiki, Sakurama. He might be the only good man in this entire show. But everybody kind of sits in a gray area, right? Because this whole setup that they have going on in the world where, you know, the Dragon Keepers have made a deal with the fighters that for their own economic benefit and, you know, without the, you know, under the threat of wiping them out completely with the divine artifacts, the fighters will continue to show up on Sundays, and, you know, all of the fucking stupid kids will keep buying tickets for it, and they'll make a fuckload of money. So that's a cool concept, right? Where you have, you know, it's not made up, essentially. Like, or there's another layer to it, at least. Like, it's not just this fake, you know, movie, the Super Sentai, which is obviously such a huge thing in Japan. There's another layer to it in this particular world, and I like the depth to it like that. And so it does make sense. Like, Dee's motivation to do what he does really makes sense, and then by the time he gets into the Ranger Squad, it's like, you see all these weird, fucking, quirky-ass characters, and, like, how they're trying to get by, and, like, you know, seeing how kind of fucked up the Rangers actually, like the Dragon Keepers actually are. It's pretty interesting, and like, because, you know, there's never really a point where anyone's sure, like super sure about, you know, whether what they're doing is right or not. So there is a lot of like a lot of nuance to this one. I quite like it. There's so many different characters just playing all these different roles, and like even by the end, and we like get to see the Blue Keeper's backstory. Again, this just ended today. Like, you see a little bit of the Blue Keeper's backstory and like what happened leading up to him becoming Blue Keeper. I'm assuming we'll see more and more similar stuff as the story goes on. Again, season 2 got announced. Cool, happy about that. But yeah, it's hard to like sum up this one in a short amount of time, right? Because there's just so much happening, and I like it that way. But yeah, it's, you know, like when you have characters like the Pink Ranger, right, who's Pink Keeper, where she's kind of like a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and you have Suzukiri, who's really Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs, but they're part like high-ranking Dragon Keepers. It makes you like question who's, you know, what's their goal, why do this, like, you know, what's the end game here? Like, what are they trying to accomplish? And even like the main character D really questions that, and it's hard to see an end game for what he's trying to do, right? It's like what end game do you really want? He's so conflicted a lot of the time, especially like towards the end of the season. You know, you can't really tell, like, does he want to just maintain a status quo? Like, is he just trying to fight for better treatment of the fighters? Like, what's the end game here? And we don't really know. So there is a lot of nuance to this one, and I appreciate it for that. I'm looking forward to season 2. There's a lot of cool characters here, and I'm really interested to see how it all plays out. So I do think you kind of have to, you know, be pretty attentive and get, you know, properly invested in the world to really, you know, want to see more of this one. This is not something you can just like throw on and not pay attention to. You kind of like have to be on the game, on your game watching this. But it is really interesting, and it rewards you if you do. So, and I assume season 2 will reward us even more. So, big fan. Looking forward to more. Thank you, Nagi Haruba. But mostly for Quince. Alright, God's Games We Play. Not much to say about this one. I thought this was pretty solid. Like, it was alright. You know, it was fine. There are anime similar to this that I think are much better. But it was pretty solid. I think this is more geared towards a younger audience. This is for that 16, 17-year-old who's looking to get into light novels, maybe. So, there is a good amount of depth here. Big world. Lots of, like, fun, cute characters. The games have a lot of like good, interesting depth to them. They're not just one note. They kind of have, there's some mystery involved sometimes. So there's a lot of good things about this, and it doesn't really feel like it drags too much at any point. So that's a good thing. The main character's pretty solid. It's cool to see him, like, you know, we don't really know, because his backstory was like, there's this girl who looks kind of like Leisha who raised me, sort of, and taught me to play a bunch of games, and then all of a sudden he just becomes like a god at, you know, just seeing through tricks and all the trickery involved with the games, and like seeing the truth behind it all. It's a little bizarre that he's just so much better than everybody else just because he had some girl teach him when he was a kid. Like, there is a big divide between him and everybody else who plays these games. Like, everybody else is basically fucking clueless compared to this man. So it does kind of make you wonder, like, what the truth is about his relationship to, like, is Leisha actually that girl? What's the deal? And that's obviously not something that'll be revealed till towards the end of the light novels, which God knows when that'll be. But it is fairly interesting. The concept is nice. If anything, I think this is one of those shows that kind of carries itself on being really aesthetically pleasing to look at, right? Because those, like, the uniforms brightly colored and very nice to look at. Pretty characters. Like, it's kind of like, if I had to compare it to something. Well, I can't think of anything right now, but my brain's working at overtime already. But yeah, overall, I thought this was pretty good. There's just not much to talk about here. It's definitely something that's geared towards people a bit younger, so I recommend it if you want like something easy to watch, but still has a decent amount of depth to it, and it's some alright characters. Pacing's pretty good. Story's not bad. It's just kind of like cool. Like it's one thumbs up, you know, as opposed to like some of the others that have been 2 thumbs up. This is 1 thumbs up. The setting's nice too. I'm a sucker for the futuristic city bullshit. But yeah, good premise, good characters, decent characters. Yeah, not bad though. Unnamed Memory. This kind of reminds me of the Kingdoms of Ruin from a couple seasons ago, and not for the reasons you think. It's because this kind of seems beyond me. You know, like, maybe I'm a 24, almost 25-year-old man, and I'm starting to think I have the brain of, like, an 18-year-old. Because this was kind of just over my head a little bit. Maybe that's not true. But, like, it does feel like it moves pretty fast. The narrative feels like it moves pretty fast. I'm not really sure why. You know, like, the sort of the driving force behind a lot of what happens in this show is that Oscar wants to marry Tinasha. And oh boy! Oscar wants to marry Tinasha. And, you know, we see some of Tinasha's backstory towards the second half of this show. But I don't really know why that one guy was trying to sacrifice her. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. But even then, it doesn't really matter. Because she turned out to be, like, okay. And she was a witch already even before that happened, which is supposedly, like, the curse that she was forced to bear or whatever. And basically every single other character except Oscar and Tinasha and maybe that one guy don't really matter. There's a couple other witches that exist and maybe help a little bit. But it's one of those shows where, you know, I'm lizard brain, reptile brain. I kind of find it hard to follow an anime if there's no, like, end game for the characters, right? Like, what are they working so hard for? And I'm not talking about the marriage. I need something a little more than that. My reptile brain struggles when that's not present. And I'm just like, you know, there's a lot of okay action in this. You know, some massive spell casting. It just seems like a lot of what they do amounts to nothing. But it has this very, like, mature vibe about it. Where they're, like the romance, I think, is handled alright. Like, the development of the relationship between Oscar and Tinasha is fine. Like, if you ask me to name one thing that happened besides the thing where they, like, the backstory, and even I don't remember that one, I couldn't tell you. Like, it just doesn't, it wasn't really working for me. It's definitely not bad. Except at the end. Where Oscar travels back in time, meets a young Tinasha, is like, look, hey, I'm your husband in the future. She's like, what? No, you're not. And then just saves her from the tragedy that struck her when she was that age. At the expense of not going back to where he came from. So I was right, and nothing actually mattered, because all of that got rewritten when he changed the timeline. Because there was, like, a whole little scene that was like, if the timeline gets rewritten, then the future timeline gets overwritten and ceases to exist. So yeah, nothing mattered. What? I struggle with this one. I'm stupid, I get it. I get it. I'm an idiot. You don't have to tell me. I'm the one who knows. If there's one thing I know, it's that. But I thought it was fine. Like, it's not like it's not enjoyable to watch. I did, like, enjoy watching it. But also, why? Like, why was anything? Especially because, like, forget the end. Why? Right? Like, I'm even disregarding the last episode, which was stupid. I'm already at a loss. And, I don't know. Like, whatever. It's just like a lot of things happen and none of them matter. It's like, the girl who was reincarnated 7 times last season. That's what this was. Although they do a lot of things and none of them matter. But it does have like a good setting, and I think Tinashe and Oscar are pretty good characters. They're fine. They're acceptable. I'm at a loss. That's it. Alright, whisper me a love song. Everybody's gay, everybody's gay. Oh, there's not a single character who's not gay in this show, and I'm living for it. This is not finished yet, but I thought it was alright. It's not amazing or anything, but for what it is, it was fine. Like, this is another one of those shows I've kind of been exposed to secondhand, right? Because, like, you see, like, I'll see volumes of the manga in bookstores. Or is it a light novel? I can't remember. It's a manga. I'll see them in bookstores. They look kind of like Yui and Yukino. So there's that. Overall, I did think it was okay, because it's kind of just about this, like, really pure-hearted sweetheart and this other girl who's, like, super inexperienced with love, but, like, really got attached to Hima, to Himari, and they're just trying to navigate their first time dating someone. They're just trying to figure it out, and there is something charming about that. It does work pretty well, and there's a lot of these other characters, so much drama, a lot of different aspects of the romance, you know, who likes who, and then getting the 2 different bands involved, you know, the band that Yori's a part of, and then the band that Shiho's a part of, and Hima, like, trying to help them get along, and we sort of understand, in the most recent episode, we kind of understand a little bit more about what happened, especially with Shiho. She's a really interesting character. I like her. But there's a lot of, like, good things about this. It's not... It does feel like it moves a little bit fast, but for the most part, I think it's pretty charming, like, reasonably so. And it doesn't, like... This is one thing that I like about when an anime that's sort of focusing more on, like, same-sex romance, or I guess any kind of romance that isn't hetero romance. It just feels like regular romance, right? There's nothing weird about it. They didn't try to, you know, differentiate it at all. It just feels natural, right? It feels like these girls are falling in love, and it doesn't, you know, as they would if, you know, like any teenager would, you know, be it, you know, regardless of their sexuality. Like, I don't mean to say that, like maybe that came off as saying, like, hetero is normal, but, like, that's not what I was going for, right? Like, these girls falling in love feels natural, and that's a good thing. It doesn't feel forced, I guess is what I was trying to go for. But that's definitely a good thing. Like, they're very emotional, and, you know, it just works on a nice level. It's not too forceful with it. It's pretty charming, and the way, you know, the band aspects of it, it doesn't interfere. Like, it plays into the story pretty naturally as well. So decent stuff. I liked this one. Well, it's still going, but yeah, pretty good. All right, characters. nothing much bad to say about this one. It's not amazing or anything, but it gets a single thumbs up. Okay, an Archdemon's Dilemma. How to Love My Elf Bride. This was alright. Again, this is another one thumbs up from me. It's very, like, fundamentally sound. It doesn't make too many missteps. There's a good amount of world building and character development, and even, like, the side characters. I think the best side character, red hair. What's her name? Shastille. She's the best side character. But there's also a lot of, like, interesting twists and turns with this one. Not a lot. A few. Like, you know, the thing that caught me off guard the most was the guy who kind of, you know, like, halfway through turned against the Zagan. Was his best friend, turned against him, and then Zagan was like, "Yo, man, you're fine. You're a pretty all right guy. Just come." Let's just be pals again. He's like, really? I might try to kill you later. He's like, well, you can't kill me. You're a pussy. He's like, all right. So he becomes this, like, Shadow the Hedgehog-esque character. It is kind of like, you know, the way that Zagan builds relationships with others is pretty interesting. And, like, him approaching... I literally was just looking at their names. Neffy, you know, inexperienced with romance as he is very charming. Her reciprocating as well. Like, the romance in this is pretty charming. But there's also, like, a lot of good world building, you know, like with the Archdemon round table or whatever that Zagan gets welcomed into, like, halfway through, not by choice or anything. But, like, then there's also, like, the Holy Swordsman, who, like, supposedly killed the Dragon Child's mother and father at some point, but there's, like, a twist to that. Like, it has some good storytelling's not the word I'm looking for. It has some good things about it. Like, the characters aren't just one note. There's some depth to them. It's just very fundamentally sound. It has a lot of good things about it. It doesn't hugely deliver at any point, really, but it is fun and cute to watch. Like, there's not much you can ask for out of a show like this, and that's about all you can really ask for, and I do think it was pretty good. So, for what it is, like, not 2 thumbs up, 1 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up was just an expression of my approval, but in reality, 1 thumbs up. But yeah, no, good stuff. Like, there are a lot of shows of this style that can miss, and this one did not. It does work pretty well. Like, even when it's not focusing on, like, its action or its romance even, it is still pretty charming. So, I've called this one Grandparents Go Wild in my notes, but it's Grandma and Grandpa Turn Young Again. I wish it was called Grandparents Go Wild, but Grandpa and Grandma Turn Young Again. This was very much in the same vein as The Witch and Her Child from 2 seasons ago. I forget exactly what the name of that anime was, but it's just like a bunch of, like, unrelated, well, not, you know, not everything is unrelated, but, like, it just hops between a bunch of different scenes that, you know, kind of maybe give you a giggle if you're lucky, if you're feeling frisky about it. You know, like, there's like 1, 2, maybe 1 to 3 minute scenes, a ton of them in each episode, jumping between them, and maybe the payoff of the joke makes you giggle a little bit. But surprisingly, it actually does. They, like, you know, towards the end, it, like, builds some lore where it's like, oh, the golden apple that blooms in this town has, like, been part of the history legends forever, and if you eat it, you gain something. You become young and spry. But also just, like, the, you know, showing off the there's not a lot of shows that focus on romance that has lasted for a long time, right? So it's kind of like there is a sort of refreshing element to seeing, like, these two people who have you know, built a relationship up over a very long time, and we, like, see the fruits. We see that, like, bear fruit, and we see, like, how they've done it, and it is sort of refreshing. And there's even, like, a little more depth to it with like the granddaughter and like the guy she likes, and it's not bad, but I just, for the most part, I just didn't really care. So I think it's something you could watch if you're just looking for something easy and you don't really need to put a lot of stock into. Because it's not bad, but it's just not really worth seeking out unless you're in that kind of very specific mood. You know what I mean? Where you would appreciate a show like this. But I do I do appreciate they tried to add some lore about the golden apple and shit. Like, it's not just throwaway BS. So that's great in comparison to everything else. It was, and then the very end where it's like you see the granddaughter and the guy she liked all grandparenting now in the fields, and they see the golden apple, and it's like, what if we eat it? And that's how it ends. Like, go on. It was alright. Okay, chilling in another world with level 2 super cheat powers. It wasn't bad, but it's not remarkable, even a little bit. We've seen a lot of these recently. Whether or not it's an isekai, the protagonist ends up fucking whacked out, with super strong abilities, and everyone's like, oh, you're a low level, you can't be strong, it's impossible, you're banished. And all of a sudden, the guy finds a wife. He's like, no, I'm not gonna help the humans fight the demons, I just want to live on my farm and have a family or whatever. And occasionally he gets dragged into fights anyway, but there's been a lot of these, and this is very, like, mid-tier of those. Maybe it's higher tier, because they're all kind of boring. But this one's alright. It's not bad. I do appreciate, like, again, I like it when there's more, because there's not a lot to either the main character or his furry wife. But they did add, like, those other night girls. Again, I'm not going to even try with their names. But who are living with the main two. And, like, there's some depth to them. There's, like, they, like, tried, whoever, the original author, like, kind of tried with them. It's not bad, right? Like, they kind of develop as characters and become more confident in themselves over the course of the season. And it was all right. Like, I do kind of like also the approach taken with the protagonist, where he actively is like the Switzerland in the human demon war, right? Where he's not affiliated, but like he's actively talking to both sides and like involved with people on opposite sides of the war. And there's even some stuff like how the Dark One is kind of like opposed to really going to war and sacrificing his people, but then there's a younger brother who's like super gung-ho about fighting and going to war and shit. So the world building is not bad, and like the characters are like fine. I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. It's kind of hard to get on board, invested. It's kind of hard to get invested in a show where the main character is like basically all powerful, because they're basically presents zero challenge to anything. And I get the power fantasy appeal of it all, but I also just don't care. So, and I want to care, right? Like that should be these shows' goals, is to make me care, and I just don't. So, take that however you want to. I thought it was alright. It's not unenjoyable. I kind of came out of every episode like, yeah, right. Moving on. Like, all right, next episode, hurry up. But yeah, like, if you like these kind of shows, you'll probably like this one. if you're, especially like if you're in it for the fan service. And like, it's not even really fan service, it's more like just cute like fan service. It's not like the sexy fan service. And I mean, like, there's also like the kind of funny, semi-funny bit of the actual, like, the hero who was revered at one point, you know, running away with that one girl, maybe not a prostitute, you know, them always getting into like Tom and Jerry-esque situations. There's obviously some care put into the building of this world and what actually happens. Like, it's not bad, but it's definitely for those people who prefer it, because I don't really care, but it was alright. Moving on. Alright, the banished former hero lives as he pleases. This is another one where I'm kind of like, yeah, it was kind of like a feel-good fantasy show where like the hero was banished, even though he's super powerful. I think the protagonist was a reincarnated hero or something. There's some depth with like the main character's brother, who's like trying to get his dad to love him by any means necessary, trying to have to kill people fused with the demon, whatever. Like, and then, you know, you have like the other girls who are all kind of into, you know, well, mostly just one, but maybe a couple others who are a little less into the main character, but the one who's really into him. And then like they all travel together, and it's like kind of cute and it's fun, and nothing they do matters too much. The main character is really never presented a significant challenge because he's super fucking strong. But it does, like, feel comfy to watch, this one. I think there's a comfy element to it, especially if you're used to these kind of shows. You can kind of just, like, throw it on and be like, this is cute. Yeah, and I think, like, the height of it, where it was most interesting, where it was the part where the dad and the brother were trying to, like, fuse with the demons or whatever. And there is, like, something about, you know, when Henrietta gets kidnapped at the end, and it's like, you're just using kidnapping her to make her the Empress as an excuse to get close to her because you're actually in love with your cousin. That's on you. That's on that guy. I don't care. Whatever. Like, you know, it's fine. Like, and Henrietta's relationship to the main character too. They were as like, she was a goddess reincarnated, and they're both just trying to enjoy life as regular people. Whatever. Like, it's fine. It was all right. You could enjoy it if you're feeling up for it. Studio apartment, angel included. Studio apartment, good lighting, angel included. This was cute. Very standard slice of life, school, harem, not school, like light fantasy, I guess. It was cute. Like, if you're, like, fucking 15 or 14 or whatever, like, you're a younger teenager, this is cute. Like, it's definitely got that vibe of, like, aimed at a younger audience. Kind of heavily focused on, like, well, not heavily. Kind of putting some focus on, like, the little sexy fan service. Maybe making some balls drop a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's got that like first romance, first harem anime kind of vibe to it, like baby's first harem anime. It kind of has that vibe to it. It's not bad though. It's overall pretty wholesome and sweet. Like, it just kind of like drags its feet in terms of the pacing, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because I do think ultimately it falls into this cute, wholesome, and sweet category without really any caveats to that. It was just that. There's nothing really spectacular or even beyond like good about this one. It was just like a fairly enjoyable little cute romance, little like high school romance with a little bit of fantasy elements to it, and like the characters like kind of learning more about themselves and like discovering finding like new friendship with this like wacky group of wacky characters, this motley crew. It's charming, and I I don't not recommend it. I would not recommend it, But it was how do you talk to the kids nowadays? I'm getting too old for this shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of like bordering on that point where I'm like, I'm not sure I should be watching this, but I am. Here I am anyway. Am I going to end up talking to like a 14-year-old about this later in my life? You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of like... But, it was cute. It was fine. There's nothing really like, they just kind of are friends and it's cute. And all the girls like him and it's yeehaw. And that's the kind of review content you can expect from the man who has reviewed like 10 gazillion anime on this channel so far. With more to come. Thank you very much. Reincarnated as the Seventh Prince. This one actually caught me off guard for being pretty good. It's not great. I don't think the character... I don't even know if I would call the characters like good, other than maybe the main character. I think the main character is like has a good amount of depth and nuance to him, but just not too much, just like the right amount. But like it only got to the point where I was like, whoa, this is actually kind of good in the second half with the Assassins arc. But like even before that, just like kind of exploring the world alongside the main character and like him being especially overpowered. Like this is one of those ones where he's like, even though the main character is ridiculously overpowered, there is actually a significant challenge presented to him at the end. And the animation of like the fighting, especially towards the end, is really surprisingly good. Like not windbreaker level, but surprisingly good. Caught me off guard. The character, it never, like there are a good amount of characters, but it doesn't introduce too many characters to the point where it feels overwhelming. So like all the characters feel like they play a role and mean something. So fair enough. But it does, this is one of those, like, even though the main character, is presented a challenge, it kind of feels like after that point, he's kind of become so overwhelmingly powerful where nothing else could even begin to pose a threat to this guy. So I'm wondering where it goes in Season 2. But even, like, the characters surrounding him are not bad. They're decent characters, like the Second Prince Albert and, like, Silpha, and... There is something there to those characters. They're not just nothing throwaway characters. So, definitely not a bad fantasy show. It was a lot better than I was expecting. Maybe not a lot better, but it did impress me beyond what I imagined it was going to. So, fair enough. I did enjoy this one overall, and yeah, like it has a good sense of world building, all right plot. Like the assassins, like the arc with the assassins, very strong, I thought. Well, in comparison to everything else, right? Just like cool. That was surprisingly compelling and interesting. So yeah, pretty good stuff. I like this one. Back to back. As a reincarnated aristocrat, I'll use my appraisal skill to rise in the world, or whatever. That's how it's written in my notes. This one's not bad either. Not as good as the Seventh Prince, but not bad either. Like, again, there's some like twists and turns in the narrative here you're not necessarily expecting. It's not just all sunshine and rainbows. It's got some compelling aspects to it, and like the main character feels pretty relatable for the most part, and like he's pretty down to earth with everything, and he's just trying to do his best and like make people happy and shit, and like he really successfully does that a lot, even when people aren't expecting it, and constantly like defies the odds. Like, here's this guy who's like of a race of humans that people look down upon, but he's actually really fucking strong. You guys don't believe me? What? Here, I'm gonna give him a sword, and he just beats the shit out of people. Like, there's a really diverse cast of characters here, which keeps it interesting. So it's not bad at all. It didn't really super impress me or anything. Didn't even really mildly impress me, but it did, like, sort of impress me. Again, this one exceeded my expectations by some marginal amount. Again, this one, another that got season 2 announced immediately. I'm curious to see where this one goes. Because really season 1 felt like it was just kind of kicking it off. So I am curious what'll happen next time. Because this one, it ends without much really happening beyond, like, the main character building his, like, squad, right? He's got all the pieces now. He, like, was finding his knights and rooks and shit, and now he's got them all, but now that was the end of season 1, so I am curious where it goes from here. So yeah, he's alright. Alright on the positive end of alright, you know? Not the negative end. It's on the positive end of alright. I'm on a roll, baby! The New Gate. This is my, middling isekai fantasy block. The New Gate was alright too. I have it rated as 7. It's not rated as 7. It's a 6. This is mostly just like a kind of a feel-good isekai. It was, imagine SAO, but the story starts after Aincrad, and instead of going back to the real world, the main character gets reincarnated back into the game world, but the game world is real. That's what this is. Also, the main character is way strong, like massively strong, that, again, nothing will even be considered a threat to this man. But kind of like the way, I don't know, like, I think the best part of it is the early part where he's, like, helping the orphanage or whatever, and helping that one girl discover or, like, attain her magic ability that she needs to take over the church, and he meets that one fella and becomes friends with him, like the only male friend he'll ever have. But you know, like, even his interactions with the girls, like Tiara and and the princess and the maid girl Schnee and Rion, they're not bad. Like, it doesn't feel like they're super forced or awkward or anything. Like, it's for like a weird isekai harem like this, it's not bad at all, I don't think. But there's also nothing even remotely spectacular about it. It does kind of surprise you with some stuff. Like, I do think the part where, like, his old friend is, like, about to kick it and challenges him to a duel so he can die on his own terms, there are some things about it that I'm like, okay, like, that was, you know, surprisingly kind of compelling. Yeah, like, you know, the characters are attractive, they're fine. I feel like the last few episodes were kind of drawn sloppily. They look kind of like shit, but whatever. The action's not really that good. But, again, this is a power fantasy, so it does feel like, you know, there's no challenge even remotely. But overall, it just does kind of feel nice and cozy to watch, because, you know, there's no real threat to the main characters, even a little bit. But yeah, like, the dialogue and interactions aren't bad. It's just pretty strong all around. Not pretty strong. Sound. It's okay. It's fine. Yeah, no, it was just kind of like one thumbs up. Maybe, like, kind of on the edge. But yeah, like, the characters are fine. Not bad. It was fine. It was fine. It's enjoyable, but it's not even remotely going to exceed, like, maybe it'll, like, even less, you know, like, fucking a little bit, just a tiny bit exceeded my expectations. But also it just drops at the end that, like, you know, Schnee kind of confesses her feelings to the main character, and Schnee's like, do you still love this girl who we've never heard of? And she just, like, appears in a flashback. It's like, yes, I do love her. We have no clue who she is. We're not going to get to season 2. This is bullshit. So she just drops that at the end. Like, there's so much we don't know about this guy. It's just weird. So the characters, they don't really have that much depth to them. But it's not like they're not fun to watch, I guess. Like, they're fine, you know? Like, it's just a whatever fantasy. It's not bad, it's not especially good, but it's definitely, it's leaning towards good, but it's not quite there. So, it's fine. It's fine! I didn't dislike it. I didn't especially like it. I just had to change my Mal rating to a 6. I think that's enough to show you what I mean. Okay, viral hit. We really are in the era of manhwa. Manhwa? Korean manga. Watching this show is kind of like watching animals have sex at the zoo. Because it's kind of weird and gives you the ick sometimes. Like, just watching, like, ooh. But you kind of like, it's like the main character, it's like women in anime when they see a penis. It's like, I probably shouldn't be watching this, but I want to. I kind of want to watch it. Just like out of morbid curiosity. You know? But overall, there's some pretty decent characters. Like, I think the main character, like, seeing his motivations become more and more clear, and like their success of the YouTube growing further and further, like him taking on wackier and crazier and stronger opponents over time. There is something compelling about it, even if it's like a morbid curiosity. So, and I think like the other characters, well, specifically, is he Snapper? What the fuck is his name? The blonde boy, and the eventual editor girl. I think they're both pretty endearing characters as well. It's just like weird. You know what I mean? It's like the main character. You know, he's pretty much solely motivated by helping his mom get surgery, like builds up the funds to get his mom the surgery she needs, and looking cool in front of the girl he likes. Which is enough if you're 17, right? So that kind of like being the driving force behind it all, and then him eventually like looking like a dweeb in front of his crush a lot, depending on the situation. It's not, there's just like, there are ups and downs with this character. It doesn't all go well, right? It does have some, like, it's an okay narrative, and you know, there's still the underlying mystery even at the end of this, where like, what the fuck is the guy with the chicken head? What's his deal, and why does he have the answers to all of this guy's questions? What the fuck is, like, is this like some phantom haunting him? You know, what's the deal with Chicken Man? So yeah, like, and even like seeing how like that MMA fighter, like, doing commentary, you know, color commentary for this guy, and like the other YouTubers that somehow like get involved sometimes, like it's got some dynamic like elements to it. It's not just the same thing every time. It changes it up, keeps you on your toes a little bit. There is like this element of morbid curiosity to like watch this guy as he gets like more and more desperate and like deeper into the hole of like getting almost addicted to fighting, and like, you know, by the end he's fully like, I love the thrill of fighting someone, of like, you know, I might get my ass beat, and I only know like a handful of karate moves, and they're amateurish. So like the characters aren't bad. There's just like there's a nice sense of like progression throughout. It's weird, but it's not bad. You know, like the romance is weird, but it's there. If that's what you like, it kind of like, it feels like it parodies like how internet culture has like grown to like make people so desperate to like, you know, do anything for the clicks, do anything for the ad revenue. It does feel like it's sort of parodying that and going to like an extreme, which is interesting, because, you know, when you think about how much that kind of thing has overtaken culture in Japan and even, I guess, Korea to some extent, like how desperate so many young folks are to, like, I say that as if I'm like 40 something, but how desperate so many people are to, like, it's like a perspective on that, puts that into perspective in a way as well, which is kind of interesting. So, yeah, it was all right. I thought it was not bad. Monster. This whole thing weirds me out. I think I have a problem just from the way that it's presented, if that makes sense, because it's sort of presented like the main character is telling, like, you meet the main character at a bar and he's regaling tales of his past, right? Like, here's what happened on day 1, here's what happened on day 87, and he goes like day by day, and like it doesn't really feel like we're experiencing the events of the story alongside him. It's not really that much of a story, but there's not a lot of really compelling elements to this. Again, this is a character who, like, cheats the system almost, and, like, becomes really strong, like this overwhelming strength to hold everybody together. And, like, even I think, like, the many a woman he ends up impregnating, like, they're not interesting characters really. They do grow thanks to, like, his help, and I'm not talking about their stomachs. Like, their abilities develop thanks to him, but it's just not interesting. It's just it's not compelling. It's not a good way to tell a story, and the story isn't even interesting enough to be well told. It's just not. Like, it's a big enough world to kind of maintain its footing for the most part, and, like, keep you semi-invested, like, when it, seeing how their civilization, I guess, develops over time. But it's just not interesting for the most part. I don't like the way that the story is told. I don't really care about any of the characters. It was just kind of like, whatever. Yeah, I wasn't really a fan of this one. Just kind of from its foundation. Very bizarre. Not a fan. Not really a fan of this one. Train to the End of the World. Since I have a thing for talking about visuals first and foremost, I think the visuals in the show are really dang good. Surprisingly good. Very fluid motion, interesting, like, dynamic camera angles. For the most part, it looks very nice. The premise is a little bizarre, and that's the point, obviously. But as, like, a story, it's mostly about, these characters, trying to figure out and survive in this weird and wacky world that they're in. The biggest thing is, like, how they're dealing with the feelings that they've been harboring, and how they deal with each other, and, like, trying to understand each other, and, like, them hashing it out constantly, and, like, being like, why did you come with me on the train? We're trying, we're just trying to help. They're really hashing out their feelings a lot, and trying to come to understand and work together as a group. But none of the individual characters are particularly memorable, I don't think. But I do appreciate that it was over and done with in 12 episodes. Like, the problem where the main character, pushed away, said things she didn't mean to her best friend, who eventually became, like, the centerpiece of the 7G malarkey. It's not bad, right? Again, it's one of those that's kind of, like, so bizarre that I'm like, wow. But again, I think, like, the main characters and, like, finding out, it's almost like a journey of self-discovery, this journey on their train, by, being honest and talking to each other. They kind of learn more about themselves, and, like, how to maintain their relationships, and even through the highs and lows and all that. So, yeah, the 7G nonsense is very strange, and it's resolved kind of easily, but I can appreciate that, because I kind of wasn't feeling it in the first place. It was kind of just really weird, and I was a little uncomfortable by it all, but it is, like, kind of, there's also a lot of goofy elements to it, so I can appreciate it for that. But, like, all that, the disagreement between the main character and like the other Senji girl who just wanted to like chase her dream of being an idol. I can't remember, but you know, them hashing it out was nice. Like it ends on a pretty satisfying note, so fair enough, and it looks pretty good. So there are times on these roundups where I go on a bit of a rant, and this is one of those times. Let's talk about Girls Band Cry. This was deceptively very strong showing. I wasn't expecting to like the 3D animation as much as I did, but it is really fluid and nice. Well, I don't actually know that. I obviously this one wasn't licensed. You couldn't watch it legally. So I watched it on a speed higher than 1 times. So it looked fluid from my perspective. But what is fluid, the concerts. When they hold concerts, I believe they actually mocapped the concerts, and they look really nice. Like the lighting effects and the animation, like the characters moving, it actually looks like they're playing guitar and drums and shit. I still haven't gotten over in was it episode 3 or 4, whenever they played Voiceless Fish in the show, right before the chorus hits, Subaru does a little fucking drumstick twirl, and I've seen Mecha do that a gazillion times. It's so real. It's so fucking real. It is amazing. So the concerts look incredible. All the music, I think, if you haven't listened to Girls Band Cry, Togenashi Togeari's discography, you're doing yourself a disservice. Especially if you've watched this. Listen to that. It's very strong. And also worth mentioning, the main 5 characters are all voiced by, I don't know what band they are actually, but they're all girls from an actual 5-piece band, matched up to what parts they play. And so, you know, like the singer of the band voices Nina and so on. So they deliver great performances, actually, like all around. Very strong voice acting performances. So that's a big help. And I do think out of all of the kind of, especially like when rock oriented, you know, between K-On! Mochi and this now, this feels like it's the most about being in a band, which makes it, again, it helps it carve its own identity among shows of a similar style, which it needed, right? It's like being in a band without the cutesy coding. It's not a coming of age like K-On! It's not like a one of those about the, you know, trying to develop social connections and social skills like Bochi. It's just being in a band and all the ups and downs that come with it, because it is hard. And like, you know, being in a band, it's like, here's a bunch of flawed characters meshing their personalities, opinions, feelings, hopes, wishes together to create music through all of the bullshit and all of the joy that they experience. Like, it's very nice, and it's hard to watch at times because Nina is a selfish prick. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and that's the point. And because of that, she actually feels like her being so blunt and honest. It's refreshing. It's nice. And because of that, like, so many episodes have to be dedicated to like Nina sorting out and dealing with her feelings. You know, like she eventually, you know, it starts with her running away from her family because, you know, she'd been bullied in middle school, and like she eventually makes up with her family. They come to understand her after she shows them how passionate she is about the music thing. It shows, right? Like, these girls, they don't feel like they're just like the cutesy whatever. These girls are musicians, right? It doesn't feel like there's any fucking coding around it. They are musicians who are like, have crappy part-time jobs, who, like, you know, struggle to deal with whether or not they're good enough to play their parts. Like, they're musicians. They're not like socially struggling girl with no friends. They're not like some goofy girl who's like trying to figure out what she's passionate about in life. these girls are all musicians, and it's really nice. They all have like very distinct backgrounds, like why they started with music and what they're dealing with now, like between Subaru and her grandma and like the acting shit. Tomo, is that her name? Like, Tomo and her past as like was she the piano player? I think she was the piano player. Yes. But like, where she was always struggling to be perfect, and like, her honesty always moved shunned people away from her, like. And, Momoka as a character is really interesting as well, like, where she departed from Diamond Dust because she didn't want the shit to become, like, super overproduced and all that nonsense, and she wanted to, like, express herself through her music and not some overproduced BS, and then by the time Togenashi's ready to go pro, she's like, I don't want to pour all my heart and soul into this, because what if we lose everything? Like, all of their feelings, I think, are pretty justified, except for Nina's sometimes, but that's the point. It's just really strong, really interesting throughout, and I love the music as well. So there's that really interesting through line of like them competing with Diamond Dust and like expressing their, they're trying to express themselves through this music, and it's compelling, it's fun. They don't give a fuck, as they say, right? Like, they're gonna do it. They're gonna face this cruel music industry where there's a fucking solid chance you'll never make anything of yourself. They're going to express their own individuality the only way they know how, and do their best, right? Like, leave no regrets. It's really compelling. It's fun. I like it a lot. It's just really strong throughout. I've said it once, say it again. I like when original anime take the chance. They go all in on it. They make something brand new straight out. And whoever dreamed up this project wholeheartedly believed in it, because there's so much love in this show. They went all in with the music, the casting, like, bringing this band of girls into it. They were phenomenal. The singer is 16, 17 maybe. Either way, I hate it. They just wholeheartedly believed in this project, and it paid off. There's so much love and care in this show. It looks great. It was so much fun to watch. These, like, intentionally flawed characters, like, just working through it all. It's nothing super spectacular, and it's very, like, grounded a lot of the time. Very mundane stuff. But their interactions, all the girls' interactions are fun, and, you get to understand them as characters, and it's just a great show. It really is. It's so much fun if you like again, no cutesy coding here. This is just, these girls are musicians through and through. It's a great watch. I wish I could say more good things, but yeah, no, it was so good. So good. So many, all these great characters. And I love the way Nina and Pink Twin Tails, their relationship sort of comes to a head as, she's the new singer for Diamond Dust, and she ends up watching their concert or whatever, and yeah, no, it was I really like this one. Girls Band Cry, very strong showing this season. Alright, Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night. I think this was a very solid coming-of-age show. It's one of those that feels so modern that it throws me off, right? Where a lot of kids nowadays, we're so connected via the internet, right? Like, it's overwhelming, and these girls in the show, like, struggle creatively. They struggle with being bullied, like deciding what they want to do after high school, like how to where do you draw the line between like real life and online life. These characters are fun, and there's interesting writing and dialogue throughout. Like they struggle, and it's hard, and like even if it throws me off on like a level that's like, hey, maybe this is what kids are going through nowadays. Man, with every one of these, I sound older and older. You do come to, like, understand their struggles and, like, why they are struggling so much. And as they go through the ups and downs in this show, it's like, yeah, I do think their feelings are justified, and they're trying to like come to terms with everything and like push through it however they can, and like become satisfied and happy with who they are and what they do, and it is good. Between like Mahiru, who was really struggling with self-esteem and like wasn't proud of her artwork at all, and like Kano, the with her mother as the having an iron fist, like ruling over her idol group with an iron fist, and then becoming rebellious after having a disagreement with her bandmate, like the pink hair, her like wanting to be a hero, wanting to be super cool, and that's just met with bullying, so she like closes up and becomes a recluse, turning to VTubing, that kind of stuff. The other girl, who was a pianist and like needed to was always pressured to be perfect in what she did and all that. There's even wacky shit like the one mom idol. Like there's a lot of like very like modern elements to this that kind of just like, wow, this actually, it could be real life. But it's written very like dramatic, and there's a lot of like, the way it's paced is dramatic as well, and like there's a lot of character interactions that you don't necessarily expect, and like that help slowly change the characters over time. And like in a world where kids are so quickly and like so thoroughly swept up in like online space and like superficial BS, like getting clout, like getting that attention and like going viral and like wanting that recognition, that superficial recognition from people you'll never know, more and more now becoming weird, or being weird, quirky, different is becoming the norm. This one really like it puts into perspective what really matters, because it really focuses heavily on like the experiences that these girls have. It's not about like the superficial BS of like the recognition, or even necessarily people seeing and appreciating the work that you do. The most important thing that the girls have is their experiences with each other, working together to create something cool. And it's not necessarily about the recognition you get, even though that's so much of what the kids focus on nowadays. It's about the feeling of the pride and the fun and joy that you have in creating something. So it's just, and so you see as like how these experiences the girls have together changes all of their lives, and even some of the side characters, how their experiences change their lives for the better. So it's nice. It's a good show. It's again, look at my shirt. It's not my thing, right? This is not a show that I'm like, that I would normally go out of my way to watch. But the visuals are nice. The story's fine. It works well. And it's just a good show overall. Like, maybe I'm not the guy who appreciates it the most. I'm definitely not. But I do think that if you're a kid, who's maybe in a similar situation where you're like so caught up in that superficial BS, this could change your perspective for the better. It has that good of a message, and it's delivered that well. So this could legitimately change a kid's life. This show, I think it would. Like a teenager, a teenager. Like if you're a teenager watching this could legitimately change your perspective for the better, I think. So it's very well done in that way. Thumbs up. Okay, Mysterious Disappearances. This one's not bad. Very bizarre, another bizarre one. But this is intentionally bizarre, I think. It has good dialogue. The characters are like fine. I mean, it does have a fairly interesting premise. It's kind of like reminds me of Dark Gathering. It feels like I don't really understand, and there's not like a definite through line for anything. There's not really any specific motivations for anything. But again, this is another one that kind of puts into perspective like modern BS, right? Like, the main character really struggles being a novelist. She's like a struggling novelist, works part-time at a bookstore, ends up, becoming the bearer of youth or whatever, and she ends up having to deal with a whole load of supernatural crap, help unload curses from people, help stop a VTuber from infecting every electronic device on the planet. Like, it gets weird, and it does, like, have some characters that, like, struggle from, like, real problems that would happen in the real world. And then the supernatural elements eventually take over, and yada yada. So, yeah, it's not bad. Not really my thing, but I do think it was alright. I think me not necessarily understanding it is part of the experience, right? Because ghosts, if there's anything not to understand, it would be like ghosts and spirits and hauntings and shit. I don't really want to understand it. But yeah, like, it has those elements of, like, social commentary, like, putting into perspective things about our world or in the modern era, like, but it does kind of, it just kind of ultimately fails to build, like, meaningful characters. It just kind of has a bunch of these characters in it that are there and, like, experience these things, but it really focuses on, like, remedying flaws and, like, trauma that characters have experienced. And the main three, like, don't really develop too much aside from the main girl, who is becomes inspired by her wacky experiences. And then ultimately, so the guy, like, he reappears at the end. He was about to disappear and then is, like, back, and it's cool or whatever. This one was kind of, like, just a little bizarre. I'm not, like, this is one where I came out of it, I'm like, alright, cool, glad that's over. Blue Archive, the animation. I haven't covered a gacha anime since Princess Connect. Now, I've only slightly dabbled in Blue Archive, so I don't really know if this is a story from the game. I imagine it's one of the many stories from the game. But it kind of just took, some story from, like, somewhere in the middle of the game and just, like, put it into an anime. And this was one, I think it works fairly well. When it comes to something like Blue Archive, you are writing on the character designs, right? Everything's kind of piggybacking off your characters. And that's not a bad thing in this case. I actually think the characters are kind of, like, quirky, interesting enough to make it work. And the setting's cool. I'm a sucker for the futuristic kind of setting, and I think Blue Archive has a pretty nice one, especially considering, like, the history that they eventually build around it with, like, the super epic sandstorm that destroyed everything, and, like, the big corporation that took advantage of it to get a ton of money out of it, get a ton of money out of the civilians. I think they sold water, if my memory serves me right. It was pretty good. Like, not everything was necessarily related to, like, the story that we were ultimately told, right, with Hoshino and her, going off to become a test subject of the big corporation. That story didn't really matter too much because it was really the resolution we're looking for, where they're all, like, happy and Sensei's like, good job, kiddos. It was just a pretty enjoyable watch. It's funny enough to carry itself. It's, the characters there's enough of them in here, especially with Problem Solver 68 and their if that's what they're called, and their involvement in the show. Aru's wonderful. She's a delight to watch. But yeah, like, there's a lot of quirkiness, and it's fun. It's goofy. I like it. It's nothing crazy by any means, but it does kind of get you emotionally invested with the last little bit, with Hoshino leaving the school and them rescuing her by the end. So, really not much to complain about here. As far as gacha anime go, I think it could have been a lot worse. And they made the right call, picking this one specific group of girls to focus on and not overwhelming us with all of them, right? Like, we did see some guest appearances, but they were very quick, short and sweet. So, yeah, like, picking, like, one story out of all of them that are in Blue Archive was the right call. It just worked because we weren't overwhelmed at any point, and we got to focus more on, like, the Abydos girls, which was nice. And there are some of the Blue Archive characters I knew the least about. So, good stuff. Like, just overall, could have been a lot worse. Could have been a lot more all over the place, overwhelming you with all of these like pretty girls who are in Blue Archive. So I think it worked. If you want to, like, I think it's definitely, if you're looking to kind of dip your toes into Blue Archive, right? It's definitely, I think, not a bad way to do it at all, without overwhelming you at all, and you'll come out of it being like, yay, and then you won't have to think about it again. But yeah, it was alright. Alright, moving on to two cores. I'm not going to spend too long on this one. Delicious in Dungeon. This falls into the free rent category of sort of like mainstream-esque fantasy shows. It looks very nice. For one, again, I'm talking about animation first. Animation looks great. Good art style, really expressive characters, which I like. A lot of the action, there's not much of it, but the action is animated really nicely, and the magic casting as well. Like all of the fantasy elements look really nice in this show. Even some of the food does almost look appetizing, even though it's made out of monsters. So, really not much to complain about here. It's just very solid. Like, it's not free-run good by any means, but it is an enjoyable watch from start to finish. It has these twists and turns in the narrative that you're not expecting even a little bit, because it's one of those shows that starts off being like, they just wandered through the dungeon, maybe they'll save this girl eventually, they'll save Laos' sister eventually, but they're just gonna like make some food out of monsters, and Marciel's gonna be like, I can't eat that, that's disgusting, and then she'll eat it anyway, and she'll be cute as hell, and it'll be like, you see, but there's a lot more to it than that, and I appreciate, like, there's these characters that are, sitting in a gray area, that have different roles to play and everything, and the fate of Laos' sister is surprising, at the very least. It's like, whoa, hey now. So, I just thought it was really strong, like, not bad, like, easily, a fun watch, like, nothing spectacular, I don't think, but it does have enough to it to make it a compelling watch, for sure. And I think the characters, having their moments of ups and downs, their moments of vulnerability, good, it makes them much more interesting, gives them depth, so I appreciate that about it. Again, I don't think it really makes too many missteps. You get what you sign up for, right? It's called Delicious in Dungeon. You see a bunch of dungeon food, and there's a pretty decent narrative to go along with it that doesn't just fall into, like, tropes or anything like that. And the fantasy setting is built really nicely as well. So, overall, this is a thumbs up and a half, I think. Maybe it's close to 2 thumbs up. Very strong. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as I enjoyed like Windbreaker and Kaiju No.8, but it was really strong. I thought so. It definitely falls into that category of like mainstream fantasy, where like it has good writing, it has interesting characters that don't necessarily fall into a trope. Yeah, just really good. Also worth mentioning, just because it's a little factoid that I enjoy. Emily Rudd voices Marciel. That's a live action Nami, and does a surprisingly good job, because she's kind of mixed in with a lot of really experienced voice actors among the main cast, and I think she keeps up really nicely. So, in the dub specifically, there's a simul dub because this was a Netflix thing. So, yeah, good job, Emily Rudd. You can tell she actually, a genuine anime fan, Emily. So, thank you for coming. We're glad to have you. So, good shit. Like Delicious in Dungeon. If you liked Free Reign, good chance you'll like Delicious in Dungeon. So, recommend, for sure. Alright, Tsukimichi! Season 2! These are 2 cores and sequels. What the fuck is up with that, huh? Tsukimichi Season 2 feels very middling. I enjoyed Season 1 a lot more. Admittedly, this is one of those shows that I kind of struggle with. Again, like, when there's no end game, I'm kind of like, well, why should I care? You know what I mean? So the main character doesn't really have an end game, and Don't even get me started on the fact that he's way too strong to consider any other being in this world even remotely a threat. So it kind of has those mix of two things I don't really like. But it was alright. Like, there's a lot of good... Again, there's a lot of, like, good elements that kind of stand on their own, but don't really mean anything in the long term. Right? Like, between the main character, like, teaching at the school and shit, and, you know, he's constantly... there's that one fella who's like, I really wish we could be friends, and he's voiced by Matsuoka, and I can't remember his name or what he actually wanted, but he was like a god, maybe. And, you know, there were some fights, kind of like, you know, there were some, like, emotional highs, you know, around the middle with, like, when the tournament got attacked, and then towards the end when he went to the castle and interacted with the other heroes and shit, the other isekai heroes. Those fights were pretty well animated as well. Like, he kind of keeps you on your toes in that sense, but there's, like, it doesn't really feel like their actions are, you know, trying to do something ultimately. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish, right? Other than just, like, maintain a status quo, which it can work, right? But I also don't, like, their motivations don't quite make sense. Like, it's just kind of the main character, you know, the demi-plane and shit kind of keeps building on itself, and and I do like the relationship he has with, like, the main his three partners or whatever, but there's just nothing spectacular, even remotely spectacular about it, that goes beyond, like, that was good, you know? It doesn't feel like there's, like, an ultimate narrative being told, you know, like, because I keep thinking, like, you know, shows where characters struggle to maintain a status quo. That's Fairy Tail. You know, Fairy Tail is one of my, you know, like, the first big shonen I ever got into. It's one of my favorites. And all of that show is this of them trying to protect Fairy Tail, maintain a status quo. But that narrative is constantly building on itself, you know, like, outside of the main cast, just always something building, you know, it's constantly building on itself. And that's not true in this show. Like, there is, like, an element of, like, the demons getting involved, and then, you know, our guy just obliterates them. You know what I mean? He just obliterates any opposition. Not really even much of a struggle. And the way he interacts with characters, like, other than the other three, it's just kind of, like, weird. I don't really know how to describe this one. It's just a little bizarre, and I'm kind of, like, when I watch it, I kind of, like, zone out, but not by choice. You know, not because I'm bored, because I'm kind of just like, why do any of this? I mean, this is it has a huge world that it's built, and it's just a little overwhelming. I'm not that big a fan of this one, but the fights look fine. I just struggle with this type of show. It's just not really my thing. I want to like it because I did think season 1 was really, like, funny and enjoyable. The sense of humor was a bit lost in this one, in my opinion, but it's not like it was bad. It's just like, I don't really get it. Alright, Urusei Yatsura reboot season 2. This concluded on it, and I don't have much to tell you, right? It's Urusei Yatsura. It looks nice. I really like the new art style, of course, but it's just like a bunch of random shenanigans, right? That's it. Of course, this one is specifically a comedy show, and it lands. Like, the comedy works. Like, there's no, like, end goal. I was just criticizing the last one for, like, no end goal, but of course there's no end goal. This is a comedy show, and it works. The comedy actually does land, and I find it enjoyable to watch. The characters are all, you know, distinct and funny and stupid, and the way they all interact with each other is fun and silly. It's like Tom and Jerry, but for Japanese kids. Urusei Yatsura feels like Tom and Jerry, but like a step above, you know, in terms of like intellectual level. You know what I mean? Like, Tom and Jerry, nobody talks, but like in Urusei Yatsura is like, oh, they start talking, and but it does work. The comedy's good and it's funny and I enjoy it. It's just like, it's a delight to watch every week. And even like the final arc with the conclusion of like it all coming to a head of how Ataru feels about Lum, and like how all of the other characters even get involved. You know, like the last episode where like, you know, you got like Shinobu and all the and Mendo all like fucking flying on robot brooms and shit and defeating some giant enemy like alien in the sky while Ataru's just running in like a tracksuit. It's the right kind of chaos. It's funny. It's endearing. I really like it. It's just really enjoyable on a simple, you know, reptile brain level, right? Maybe a level above reptile brain, but like on a very simplistic level, Urusei Yatsura is really enjoyable from start to finish. It never lingers on anything for too long, so it kind of keeps it fresh and fun. So I appreciate it for that. But yeah, just really fun watch. Would recommend, of course. Okay, let's touch a little bit on Blue Lock episode Nagi, because that just came out. Not gonna harp on this for too long. Of course, you guys know how I feel about Blue Lock. It was great. It was nice to see the like kind of re-experience the events of season 1 from Nagi's perspective, because he's a character who's kind of like on his own in the world of anime, right? Where there's not a lot of characters who are like Nagi, where unmotivated to an extreme, and in experiencing the events of what happens in Blue Lock, he finds that spark, that motivation, and like we see how it all begins with his like partnership with Reo, and it's fun. Like that, those first 20-30 minutes of the movie is like really the only thing that like kind of really differed from the main stuff. But the way they like summarized everything too, like the major parts of, you know, especially Nagi's Team V versus Team Z, that game was like the emotional high point where Nagi really found that spark, and you get to see it through his eyes and see his thought process and experience it alongside him. It's good. So very enjoyable. Good movie, good watch for sure. Like especially since season 2 is on its way in October. Big fan. Like the post-credit stuff where they're preparing for the Blue Lock versus U20 game. That shit is peak, dog. The U20 game is so peak. Holy shit. I'm pumped for season 2 of Blue Lock. It's going to be great. So yeah, good movie, good watch. Not really much to offer that wasn't in the main Blue Lock, but I think they did a good job of like, because it wasn't just a summary, right? It was more than that. It was like the way they condensed everything into movie form was good. So, good shit. Alright, moving on to sequels. Mushoku Tensei Season 2, Part 2. I've spoken on Mushoku Tensei before. This is up there with Part 2 of Season 1. This was a lot better than Part 1 of Season 2, in my opinion. Because it kind of felt like Part 1 was just, I guess, like establishing this new setting, this new like part of Reese's life. This really expands on it a lot, and I know, like, I understand that Mushoku Tensei is a character piece. Like, Rudius is an intentionally flawed character, and you see his growth and development as it goes on. He, like, learns what it means to, like, to him to be a decent human being, like, to grow out of from this, like, this a horrible, you know, predatory asshole and of an adult into a decent human being. Shit. I get it. I get it, but I struggle with it. Because a lot of it feels so, like, it feels like it drags its feet a lot. This one wasn't that bad with that, admittedly. I did quite enjoy it. More than I expected. There's a lot of good things about this one. Especially diving into the second half, like, you know, post all of the, you know, newlywed phase with Sylphie, and, like, seeing all of the trouble that they go through to rescue Zenith. there's a lot of like ups and downs in this one. It's good. I liked this one because it's dynamic. It was interesting. It was more like part 2 of season 1. Why I liked that one. So I get it. It might even be the best of the 4 cores so far, but it's just not really my favorite thing in the world. And you do kind of like see Rudeus like struggle with all of these like different feelings he experiences, especially after the spoiler thing happened. Of course, I'm not gonna say it because that's a pretty big spoiler. But yeah, like you see how like Rudeus deals with all this shit, and, like grows, and like he helps. I think this is the one where he helps the one other isekai girl kind of work out her path forward to like discover a way back to Earth. Like, there's some good stuff in this season. It was not bad at all. Like, it just, I don't know why part 1 of season 2 had to be so slow and nothing. You know? I'm not, like, there are shows that I covered where I'm like, I wish I liked this one more. Mushoku Tensei is not one of those. I don't wish I liked this one more than I do. But I do see the vision. As much as it pains me to admit, I do see why people enjoy it. So, fair enough. Also, that the fight, the climactic fight scene looked really nice. It really did. Mushoku Tensei doesn't play around with this animation. So good stuff. Fair enough. Fair play to you guys. Fine, you win. All right. I'm the asshole. Shit. Okay, The Misfit of Demon King Academy, Season 2, Part 2. Not a lot to say about this one, although I probably should rectify that Part 1 of Season 2, which I only covered after it was delayed, so I didn't get to finish it. The second half of Part 1 was actually pretty good. Very, like, kind of compelling with, like, the whole thing, the sword guy and his daughter and shit. It wasn't bad, and this one kind of flipped on the silly switch, which kind of surprised me. But it's still not over as of recording. It's only been 10 episodes. But it's fine. Like, there was something Ano said that really stuck with me. I think it was in the most recent episode, where he said, "It doesn't make sense, but it's fun, and that's what matters." I think that's probably about something. I think that was probably about this show. Because it doesn't make sense, and it's all over the place, and it jumps between different things that don't really feel like there's an overarching narrative, there's no through line. But it's stupid and kind of fun to watch. You know, like, it's not the most fun thing in the world. But I do think it's alright. I think it's fine. Like, this is one of those where it feels like if you read the light novel, you're probably like, alright, yeah, you know, like, here are the bunch of things that they couldn't quite squeeze into the anime. You know, maybe, like, motivations for characters, like, certain details that kind of escape us as anime watchers. Like, it's not bad. It's just, and it is kind of goofy and fun in places. And, you know, even if, like, Sasha and Misha have been reduced to, like, harem fodder at this point, I'm sure there's more to, like, there will be more to them and should the story continue. But it's not bad. It's fine. It's like, whatever. It doesn't make sense and it's kind of fun. Whatever. Yeah. It has, like, the same twists and turns, you know, that it's always had, where, like, this character shows up for 45 seconds, like, "Oh, Anos, I've been expecting you, please come in," and then, like, 45 seconds later, he turns evil, and I was just like, I knew this was happening. I knew this was gonna happen. Well, I'll kill you, and make you good again, and then bring you back to life and make you good again. It's that same shit. It's the same shit, and then there's, like, something about the girl who might be his sister or whatever. There's just something about, I don't care. Like, you know, maybe it'll be good in the last 2 episodes when it finally resolves. But there's too much uncertainty at this exact moment for me to say for sure. So, whatever. I think it's fine. It is goofy and kind of fun. So, whatever. Date Alive Season 5. Date Alive ends in 2024. Can you believe it? This, surprisingly, actually feels like it paid off on us sticking around for this long. Which blew my mind. It dumps a ton of lore on you in rapid succession, and it all feels like it kind of breaks. You know, it repaints the world we thought we knew of Date Alive, right? It reveals all. So it actually does feel like we've been rewarded for sticking around with the show for this long. And by God, it surprised even me. I was like, this is good lore. This is good. Like, we're learning about, we're learning the truth, damn it. We're like the truth seekers, kissing dads and all that. I was surprised. Like, it has, the backstory finally getting dumped on us is so refreshing. Like, I finally feel like things make sense. So I'm not going to spoil too much on that end. Because it is like world-shattering lore, you know, like we learn a lot about the origins of things and like why everything started, and but a generic happy ending for this is about what we expected, and it works just fine. So not too much to complain about there, and even though the 3D that they use is kind of ugly and bad. You know, they can't be bothered anymore. It's like, if you're not sticking around for the animation if you're this far into Date Alive, Jesus Christ. You're not even sticking around for the fan service if you're this far into Date Alive. But fuck, I was surprised by like how compelled I suddenly became by the narrative. So fuck it. Like it all, like, it actually felt like it brought everything that Date Alive has been together. So fair enough. It was surprising. Again, I do sort of still have the issue where there's too many characters who don't really do anything, but there was sort of like this last ultimate fight scene where they all kind of contributed a little bit, so whatever. Yeah, this was one of those where like the show ended and I actually had to just go onto the wiki and like figure out the things I didn't really understand. But it is there. It's all like, you know, if you do that, you'll get it. So it's like, whatever. Fine. Cool. Thanks for playing 60 episodes of peak fiction. Yeah. No, it was fine. It was surprisingly good. I did enjoy it, actually. But again, I don't want to go too deep into the lore for spoilers. And there's not really much for me to say, I think. It's just like, yeah, like all of it, it's one of those situations where you stuck around and then like it just dumps everything about like the origins of everything on you at once. Yeah, I think it kind of did, like, it pays off, surprisingly enough. I wouldn't have thought it would, but it did. So, may eyes egg on my face again. But yeah, 3D is gross, looks bad, but it's whatever. Fuck it. It's fine. I am a little sad to see Date Alive go, but not that sad. Banger opening, though. Opening's a banger. Alright. The Irregular at Magic High School, Season 3. Here we are. It's 2024. Date Alive and Irregular at Magic High School in the same season. Holy shit. Alright, we're throwing it back to 2014. I gotta tell you, this is very middling. It really, like, I'm kind of like, you know, whatever. The strongest this season of Irregular Magic High School made me feel was the happiness that Lisa was doing the OP, which is just rising hope of the sequel. But that's not important, although not a lot in this season really was. No, I mean, it was fine. Like, I think, like, like, imagine my surprise when, you know, I look this shit up and it's like, oh, so there's 32 volumes of the light novel. Season 3 gets up to 15. So we're kind of like right in the middle of everything, which means we don't really know enough about the narrative to like, you know, again, this is another one of those that's just going to dump everything on us towards the end probably. And we don't really know that much about the overall narrative. Like, not a lot of the pieces have come together yet. And a lot of this stuff is just, it's not super significant. So, like, the most significant thing, I think, was, like, the new kid. Was it a cousin? I can't remember. Minoru is his name. Who gets introduced, and he's like a product of incest, and that's, you know, that's what this show's all about, if anything, incest. I mean, it was all right. Like, it wasn't unenjoyable. Like, if you, again, I said this about, like, a few things in previous roundups, but, like, if you've come this far into the Irregular Magic High School, it's gonna be like, yeah, here are these characters you like, they're doing things, they're fighting people sometimes, they're, you know, Miyuki's like, Onisama, please come back soon. And that's exactly what you get. You're just going to be like, you know what? Here I am in season 3 of this shit. I got what I paid for. I paid for that Crunchyroll membership, and I got my money's worth. You know what I mean? Like, you just, like, that's it. Not much more to it than that. You know, like, kind of, like, builds on itself ever so slightly, so that all the pieces can come together in season 17. And also probably leaves a fuck ton of details out from the light novel. So, it leaves me a little bit lost, but it's not bad. It just wasn't really all that good either, although I wanted it to be. But, whatever. Fuck it. Alright, Konosuba! I feel like I don't really need to talk about Season 3 of Konosuba all that much, because, god damn it, what did you expect? It's the same goofy shit it's always been. And it is funny. It's very funny. For the most part, like, it's the jokes it sets up lands, and like the cast is all still super goofy and fun to watch, and it's like it's like visiting an old friend, you know? Like, we got the Megumin spinoff last year, and it's like, yeehaw, here are all the full cast in their full glory, back again, doing goofy shit, and it's like, yay. You know, between, like, the first half, where it's like Cosma living with the princess and shit, and him, like, doing his best to convince her that he's the coolest kid in school, and then, like, Darkness, you know, having, you know, her family situation, her being sold off to marriage and shit. It does have the right amount of drama, right? Like, it changes things up, it keeps you on your toes a little bit. It's not just the goofy stuff. There is some, like, decent character work and I wouldn't say narrative development, but you know, it does things that kind of maybe throw you off a bit, and it's not just standard BS, you know. It's not just solely focusing on the comedy aspects. It works the comedy aspects in with the narrative that it's trying to tell while working on these characters. So it's like, yay, whoop-de-doo, that's cool, you know, and you know, it's exactly as goofy as you want it to be, you know. It doesn't disappoint, I don't think. So, not too much to say about this one. I hope there's more. I do hope they do more Konosuba after this. I'm sure they will at some point. But it just works. Konosuba, it just works on, like, a very fundamental level, doesn't it? It's fun to watch. It's the right kind of goofy. It's got a fun premise. Like, the characters they don't really ever feel that stale. Like, it's not just the same old shticks over and over again. There's some depth to them. So yeah, it's nice, isn't it? It's fun to watch. So, yeehaw. And finally, God bless our fragile human hearts, Kyoto Animation, thank you. Sound Euphonium Season 3. This was really good, wasn't it? I'm not gonna sit here and blab about how Sound Euphonium is one of the best written, most beautifully produced coming-of-age anime ever. You know that, of course. Like, it's so good. It's so good. This does a great job of, like, again, it takes what we already know about Sound Euphonium and then adds more to it. It puts like a twist on it that you're not necessarily expecting. We're not used to it. It's good. It does everything right, pretty much. And all of the things that we see, you know, brings back the characters from previous years, and it's good. It's just really good. It's fun to watch. It looks beautiful. And I'm sad to see it go. But it's just a great show as it is. It's great, and I love the way they ended it, too. By God, I love the way they ended it. Very satisfying. So, because a lot of this season is Kumiko learning how to operate and deal with everything as the president of the band club. You know, having to be the glue that holds everything together and be the leader and, you know, be the figurehead of all of these, like, emotionally vulnerable kids who are, like, trying to make connections and are giving their heart and soul to what they're doing in the band club. Like, she has to be there for everybody and, like, you know, be the one who can, like, handle disputes and, like, you know, she's even dealing with her own, you know, upset feelings, and like she's dealing with Mayu, who is a great addition to like throw a wrench into everything, right? Where she's like this super talented euphonium player, but she's a transfer, and all of the Kohais want Kumiko to play the solo with Reina, and that's what she's been trying to do for 3 years, where they play solos together and win gold, and they win gold at the end. Of course they do. It's not really much of a spoiler, I don't think, but they're doing gold at the end with Mayu playing the solo, and it's nice because, like, it's a cool aspect of the coming of age, I think, right? Because reality sucks. Reality is cruel. You're not gonna get the things you dream of all the time. So Kumiko and Reina not getting to play the solo together, it sucks. But that's reality, and that's how it is. And, you know, Kumiko told Mayu not to hold back on the auditions, and they didn't, or she didn't. And they gave it all they had, no regrets left on the table, but they wanted gold more than anything, so things had, their selfish dream had to be sacrificed for the sake of that gold. So, it's just really strong. It's really good. Like, I don't have to say, I don't feel like I have to sit here and tell you Sound Euphonium is really fucking good, because it is. You know, and the way it, like, sparsely uses the graduated senpais, Natsuki and the other girl, and Asuka, who is still struggling with her a little bit, but it's all done really well. And, like, you know, even Reina and Kumiko have their differences in this season. They, you know, as best friends always do, they struggle with each other's feelings, and they're trying to build and, like, understand all of it. It's very good. And for some reason, all of the scenes where Kumiko and Reina cry are the most beautiful scenes of the whole show. Whatever. It's the emotional high points. Right? Right. There's a good bit of Kumiko, like, struggling to decide what she wants to do in the future. And, you know, she's struggling with, like, coming to terms with, like, the disconnection she'll feel with her classmates after she graduates. Like, you know, will they really still be able to be friends after they're not always going to be in the same place at the same time anymore? You know, how are they going to fare on their own as members of society? And, like, we've all been there. It's a real struggle for those kids. So it's like, it's such a good coming of age. It's one of the, again, I don't have to tell you this, but it's so good. So, there you go. I really like Sound Euphonium. Sound Euphonium, I only just caught up, like, while Season 3 was going on. Like, I think I caught up around the time Episode 5 came out. And so, like, it was only, like, the last 8 episodes I was watching week to week. But it feels like I've been watching this show for years. You know, like, it feels like I've been with these characters forever. And any show that can pull that off well is a winner. It is fucking good in my book, right? So I really like Sound Euphonium. I don't have to sit here and tell you that. Great stuff. Really nice way to round it out. I I'm sad to see it go, but as any good coming of age will tell you, we'll always have the memories. That was cheesy as fuck. I should jump out the window now. Okay, and that's all she wrote for this season. Big one, of course. That was always going to be the case. But some very strong showings this season. Very good, and looking forward to next season. Well, but I mean, between 2.5D Seduction and 100 Years Quest coming up next season, I'm a happy boy, I tell you. I'm a happy boy. I will see you again in July. I'm going to do some tier lists. I actually will probably do a tier list between now and the next roundup, so stick with me. I'm going to update my Shonen Jump manga tier list because I've read a bunch more recently. So yeah. I look forward to that, and I'll see you guys at the end of next season. Bye-bye. You bastards.